For those who don't know, what is the Lincoln Film Society?
Well, it's an organisation that seeks to provide an opportunity for people who want to see different sorts of films, that meets on a regular basis in Lincoln throughout its season, which is from May to September to the following May. There's a committee and then there's a membership, and we try to strike the balance between film and society. So there is a social element which we think is very important and which certainly a lot of our members appreciate and enjoy. And well, as I think you probably know, we've been going quite a while.
How does the society work in terms of attracting the public? Because it's a membership system, isn't it?
It is, yes. I don't know whether that's a curse or a blessing. It seems to work in a way that I don't quite understand, because in the course of the last 10 years we've seen our membership go up by nearly 50%, from about 260, I would think, to this season's figure, which is 390. Got my ideas as to why it works. We don't advertise as such. We do produce publicity. We've got a website. This year we've got a Twitter account. I don't know how many people follow us on Twitter. Facebook page, again, I don't know how many people follow us on Facebook. We get information in the local media, printed media, and I believe our films are mentioned on BBC local radio programme. So whether it's one of those or a combination of all of those, or simply the fact that it's word of mouth, I'm not really sure. I wish I understood it a bit better. However the system works, it's bringing people in. Just because it's a society and a members only society, that doesn't mean you have to be a kind of film nut, but you know, it's obviously great if you're interested in different films, interesting films, more niche films, and what we try to do is to appeal to people by putting on stuff that we think they'll come and watch, and I'm pleased to say that seems to be working.
For anyone who may be interested in the society, what are the benefits of becoming a member?
I think the key benefits are twofold. First of all, there's the opportunity to see films would never otherwise be shown, and then secondly, it's the value for money aspect. To join, for someone like yourselves or for students, you pay an annual subscription of £25 and that's it. You don't pay any more. There's no ticket price on the door. You're a member, you get a card, you can come and see as few or as many films as you like. And this season we've got 24 films in the programme, so it doesn't take a maths genius to figure out that if you came to see all of them, you're paying £1 a film. And you're not going to get any better value than that anywhere. So the major benefit, I think, is the fact that it's good value for money, and it's also a very interesting and diverse programme. This year's programme has films that originally released as far back as 1924, but they've also got films that were released within the last 8 months. So and what we try to do is to represent as wide a range of genres and styles of filmmaking as we possibly can.
Why do you think it's important to show more niche films, other than the more mainstream ones that would generally be seen at the Odeon?
I think if film audiences today aren't allowed to realise that there are other types of films that can be seen and appreciated and enjoyed, then the impression that they will have received from the media and from publications like Heat magazine and the internet is that there really are only one sort of films that matter, and those are the films that are produced in Hollywood. And I'm afraid to say that for someone of my age and experience, looking at someone of your age and experience, I think there's a real gap in the knowledge that exists. I had a conversation with somebody at our screening venue last Friday about Skyfall. Now, we're based at the venue, which is the new digital cinema that's opened up at the Bishop Grosseteste University. And so we've been showing high definition digital films with surround sound in that theatre since the beginning of our season. So the films that we're putting on there are as good as anything that you would see in any commercial cinema. Now, the venue is running a mixed programme. There's the programme that they run themselves, which includes quite commercial films. There's the programme that we run, which is not commercial in that sense. And then the venue also put on films that they might call world cinema, just to provide a bit of diversity. Anyway, it turns out that they're showing Skyfall in January. And so I had this conversation based on a remark that I made, which was that there's nobody in the university population in the city or in anywhere who's going to go and want to see Skyfall in January, because it's been out about 6 weeks, everybody will have seen it. It's a waste of time. So the young man I was speaking to said to me, yeah, but that's what the students want. And I said, well, you know, what about the other films that are shown here, meaning the niche films? And he said, well, they're all aren't they? And I said, well, have you seen any of them? No. And that proves my point. You know, all this young man seemed to be aware of was that Skyfall was, you know, like the latest hot movie, and that there wasn't anything else that was worth considering. Now, we showed a film earlier this year from Norway called Headhunters. Headhunters is a thriller based on one of the crime novels by Joe Nesbo. But Joe Nesbo is like Henning Mankell, and he's really a flavour of the month at the moment. Scandinavian drama, Scandinavian crime writing, Scandinavian cinema is really hot. And Headhunters is a really good example of a hot movie. It's got action in it, it's got dark humour, there's plenty of violence. It's a thriller-minute ride for all 2 hours of its runtime. And we had an audience of 200 in for that. There wasn't a single student in the place. I've refused to accept that had any students to see that film, they wouldn't have gone out thinking, my God, that was good. Where can we get some more of this sort of stuff? To answer your question, I think the importance of showing these sorts of films is to offer the opportunity to people who might otherwise not even be aware of the existence of such work, the chance to go and see and get into world cinema, because there is some fabulous filmmaking going on around the world, and yet unfortunately all too often people seem to think that it's Hollywood and nothing else.
How does your society stay running? Do you get people to pay to watch the films, or do you stay afloat purely through donations?
Well, it's because it's a membership-based organisation. We are largely funded through the subscriptions people pay, but we do have some people who sponsor our films, so we attract a bit of revenue that way. And we also run one or two, you know, low-key fundraising events, just to, you know, I mean, in the days when we needed to have access to some funds to deal with equipment repairs, the best way to do that was to have a series of, you know, little raffles start of each film. That's carried on, and that's a helpful source of revenue to us. We also offer guest memberships on a film-by-film basis, so we're getting about 14 or 15 people turning up on average to see the films that we show. So, you know, there's a mixture of money that comes in, but most of it comes in through the membership system.
About £7,000 of the Society's money went into a new screen for the new cinema, The Venue, at Bishop Groteste. So what benefits has this brought to the Society as a whole?
I can't tell you just how big a transformation we've seen up at that theatre. We've been there since 1987, so been established there a long time. When we first moved up there, our films were shown on 16mm. We moved from there to 35, and we've been working with 35mm really up until, I suppose it was January or so of last year, when we began to start to wonder what was going to happen if 35mm stopped being the medium of choice. It was clear that was the trend, that it was going in that direction. Because of the support we've had from the authorities at the Venue, we're now in a very, very good independent cinema in all but name. And you speak about the £7,000 that we invested in a new screen. Well, that we felt was an investment we had to make, because we were being given the opportunity to use a first generation cinema standard Christie 2000 digital projector with a 14 speaker surround sound system. Now, you wouldn't buy a brand new Lamborghini and then take out the leather seats and put vinyl seats in it, would you? And we just didn't see there was any point in having that quality of sound and projection available to us and not put it on a screen that was going to make the best of the image and also to help complement the quality of the sound. So we decided we would spend a significant sum investing in the new screen, and I have to say, you know, it's terrific. So we've now got an absolutely top-rate place for people to go and see films and discover a whole new world of cinema. I think that's the most exciting bit. You know, yesterday my wife went to see Untouchable, which is the French film that's broken box office records in France last year. Great film. Modest audience, but it's a better audience than some of the films that they've shown which I've attended up there. But on the new screen, with the new projector, in the new environment, it's just great. It's a perfect little cinema, and you know, I think that's reflected in the numbers that we've had join the society, and our average attendance, which at the moment is running at about 175 per film. It's a win-win all round.
As the chairman of the society, what's your background that led you to be in this position today?
I think I sort of came into it by accident rather than by design. I started going to the cinema when I was a young lad, but that was a treat more than a hobby or a passion. When I went to college to train as a teacher, there was a film society in the college, and I got interested in seeing some of the films that were being screened there. Then when I came to teach in Lincoln, to begin with, I didn't know about the film society. It was just something that I was introduced to by a colleague, and I started to come on a gradual basis, and then it became a bit more than casual, and after a while it was my Friday night out. If it was a Friday night, that was film society night. But I asked if there was any help I could give, and somebody said, well, why don't you join the committee? So I joined the committee 15 years ago, and then the then chairman sadly died. So around about 2001, I was asked if I would be prepared to consider being chairman, and I ended up as chairman, with no real background other than a general interest in the cinema. And so, as I say, it was a bit of an accident, but over the last 3 or 4 years I've been able to give a lot more time to the role of chair, and in those sort of 10 years I've been involved as the chairman of the society, I've become more and more passionate about what the society actually is and stands for. And so, if I bring nothing else to the position, I bring some enthusiasm for what it stands for. And because I was a head teacher when I retired, I brought some management and leadership experience to bear. And hopefully I'm using that in the right way to take the society on to the next stage of its development.
The society has been running now for almost 60 years next year, so what's the history behind Lincoln Film Society?
Well, like most film societies, I guess it started out back in 1953 just with a group of enthusiasts who wanted to show films. As I say, I didn't get involved until probably the late 70s or maybe even the early 80s. And in those days, the films were shown on 16mm at Park Street. It's now the Home Club. And it was pretty rough and ready, let me tell you. I don't know an awful lot about the history prior to that day, beyond the fact that I do know the society had to move around a bit to find a venue, and Park Street wasn't the only place it used as a home. And at times the membership was really on the edge of causing the society to fold. I mean, it was, we were talking, I think long-standing members had told me that there might have been no more than 50 or 60 members involved in total. And I don't remember there being really big audiences in the days when I first started going to watch. Maybe 30 or 40 would have been typical. But fortunately, in the late 80s, Bishop Grosseteste College, as it then was, developed a building that they got on the campus into a community theatre. And it so happened that the principal of the college and the chairman of the society at the time knew each other quite well. So the principal rang the chairman up and said, would you be interested in relocating to a permanent home? And when we saw what the facilities were like, we jumped at that opportunity. As I've already said, at that time we were showing films in 16mm, but it became important for us to move to 35mm because filmmakers were making films in 35mm, 16mm was dying out, and so there wasn't the access to the new prints. So we bought a 35mm projector, we upgraded from a sort of square aspect ratio screen to a CinemaScope screen. From early 90s onwards, we showed films in that format, and gradually we began to see that the word was going round that there was something interesting happening because the audience numbers started to pick up, and so did membership. And in those days we had a waiting list, and there was a point at which we looked at the membership numbers, which we'd always tried to control because we thought, well, we wouldn't want to get too many members in case we couldn't fit everybody in, but we actually had something like 220 members and as much as 30% extra people on the waiting list. So there were about 70 people on the waiting list, and they were getting a bit fed up. They kept saying, when can we join, when can we join? We thought about it and we thought, well, if we took everybody off the waiting list, would they still all turn up on the same day to the film? And we decided that the chances were that that wouldn't happen. So we took everybody off the waiting list, and the membership jumped from, as I say, 210 or so up to about 260, 270, and it's gone on from there. So, we could see that we were doing something right, But as I said earlier, it began to become clear to me in 2011 that we had to decide what was going to happen next. We were doing extremely well. We were attracting audiences, good audiences. We got a good membership. We were financially very stable, and digital was the next big challenge. And it so happened that when we began to debate how to go digital, the college was beginning to look again at the way the theatre was being used, and I went along to talk to them just at the right moment, because I think they were beginning to start to say, well, what options do we have? So I fetched up on the doorstep with a proposal that we actually develop the theatre and install digital projection. And fortunately, that's what happened. So we're now at the point now where we are, interestingly, the screening committee had a meeting last night to decide what the next challenge that faces us is. And whereas previously we've always picked our film programme for the year, we think it's quite possible now that we're going to have to break the season up into two parts to try and get hold of films more quickly after they get released. Stuff that we show at the moment, we booked in the spring of this year, but some of those films were released the Christmas before that, so there's always a bit of a time lag between a film being released and us being able to show it, and we think we now have got the opportunity to cut that time lag down, and hopefully, I don't know, we've got to work it out first and see how it's going to impact on membership and subscriptions and the other costs that we have to bear, but we think there's a good possibility that we will split the season in two and then try and bring the films that we want to show into the city much quicker than we can do so at the present time. So, we're at the point of trying to now see where we go next, and whether we'll be here in another 60 years is anybody's guess. I won't be, I can tell you that.
Do you put money into independent filmmaking?
Don't at the moment, because I suppose you'd have to say we are a private club, and therefore we have been set up with the principal aim, the sole aim, of showing films to people who are interested in seeing them. But I think we're talking about an organisation, or a picture of an organisation that existed before the university was established, and we've got good links with the university. We're working closely with the academy, we're working with the Media, Humanities and Technology Department, got good links to people like Sarah Barrow and Brian Winston, David Slide. And I think personally I see that there has to be how the society is going to move forward to promote film across the city, because as I said earlier, I've got this view that most people in Lincoln seem to consider the Odeon as the only source of a decent film. I think that's a view that should be challenged. And I think there are ways we can do that. I think rather than actually put money in, we did have a discussion recently about perhaps offering the people here on the campus who make films a chance to have their short films put on at the beginning of a main society feature, because the reason you make films is to get them seen. And actually, our next film on Friday of next week is an animation preceded by an animated short made by two graduates of the university, Neil Baker and Stephen Hatton, who formed a company called Electric Egg. And we've already shown one of their short films as part of our evening presentation this season. And as I say, we've got another one coming up at the end of next week, and then we've got a third one after Christmas. So I could see that might be the first step forward, but I think we'd have to really think hard about sponsoring events, because that's going to put a bit of pressure on us financially. While we're not exactly on our beam ends, I think we have to really look at the whole, whether that's consistent with the constitutional document that we work to, which is organised based on something that the British Federation of Film Societies set up. I think there is the possibility, I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but next year, as you know, is our 60th anniversary, and we are looking to put on a film festival in June, and we are looking to involve the university and the drill hall as well as the college, and we're looking to see if we can put as diverse a programme of events on as we can. So we've got a meeting next week talking to the guy who runs Lincoln Shorts to see if we can bring something like that in. So I think the best option for developing the film in the city is going to be through closer links between ourselves and the university. And who knows where that'll end up. It may well be that in 5-10 years' time we are in a position to sponsor something. But what we need is students like you with all your money to come and join the society and spend a lot of it, and then we'll become an even more successful organisation, and then we'll be able to afford to sponsor some people down here.